Most people think NVIDIA dominates AI because of hardware, because it builds the fastest chips on Earth. But that is only half the story, because chips can be copied, prices can be undercut, performance gaps can shrink. The real reason NVIDIA has so much leverage over the AI industry is software, a nearly invisible ecosystem called CUDA. And right now, AMD, OpenAI, Amazon, Google, and the biggest technology companies in the world are trying to weaken it. Look at the headlines. The story is always about silicon, Blackwell, H100s, AI factories, massive GPU clusters. And yes, the hardware is elite, but hardware alone does not explain NVIDIA's position. It does not explain why so many engineers, cloud providers, startups, researchers, and AI labs still default to NVIDIA, even when cheaper alternatives exist. To understand NVIDIA's real advantage, you have to look past the metal. You have to look at the layer around it. A raw GPU is incredibly powerful, but power alone is not enough. It needs a way for developers to use it. In 2006, NVIDIA built that layer. They called it CUDA. CUDA allowed developers to use NVIDIA GPUs for general purpose computing, not just graphics, not just gaming, not just rendering, but complex math, scientific computing, machine learning, deep learning, and eventually the workloads that power modern AI. Think of it this way. The GPU is the engine, CUDA is the steering wheel, the road system, the traffic laws, the GPS, and the repair manual. Without the software, the hardware is harder to control. CUDA made NVIDIA's chips useful to developers at scale, and that changed everything. This took nearly 2 decades, and it worked like a compounding loop. Developers learned CUDA because it was useful. Universities taught CUDA because researchers and engineers needed it. Researchers used it to publish breakthroughs. Libraries were built around it. AI frameworks supported it. Companies hired engineers who already knew it. And over time, CUDA became more than a tool. It became the default. That is the part most people miss. Engineers do not choose CUDA only because NVIDIA hardware is fast. They choose it because the ecosystem is familiar, because the documentation exists, because the libraries are mature, because the bugs have already been seen before, because someone somewhere has probably solved the exact problem they are facing. That is not just a feature. That is a moat. This is where hardware companies miscalculate. AMD and Intel can build powerful chips. They have the money, they have the engineers, they have the ambition, but what they cannot instantly copy is nearly 2 decades of developer trust. You can reverse engineer a semiconductor. You cannot reverse engineer years of internet forums solving obscure bugs. You cannot copy the muscle memory of millions of developers. You cannot instantly recreate production workflows inside thousands of companies. When an enterprise buys AI infrastructure, it is not only buying a chip, it is buying stability, it is buying fewer unknowns, it is buying speed. Switching away from CUDA, it is not just a purchasing decision, it is an engineering decision, a hiring decision, a workflow decision, a risk decision. And when companies are spending billions on AI infrastructure, risk matters. That is why CUDA is so powerful, not because alternatives do not exist, they do, but because leaving CUDA, it can be expensive, slow, and uncertain. But no moat is untouchable, and the counterattack has begun. AMD is pushing ROCm, an open source software stack designed to make AMD GPU more competitive for AI workloads. OpenAI built Triton, a language and compiler that helps developers write high-performance deep learning code at a higher level. The goal is simple: make developers less dependent on writing directly for NVIDIA's software stack. And then there are the hyperscalers: Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta. These companies do not want to depend forever on NVIDIA's prices, supply, and roadmap. So they are building custom chips. Google has TPUs, Amazon has Trainium. Others are building their own AI infrastructure. They want control over cost, control over supply, control over performance, control over their own AI future, which leads to the defining question of the AI race. If software helped build NVIDIA's advantage, can software also weaken it? CUDA does not make NVIDIA invincible. No company is invincible. The walls are facing pressure. AMD's software stack is improving. Open source tools are getting stronger. Cloud providers are building custom silicon, and the cost of NVIDIA hardware is forcing companies to look for alternatives. But CUDA gave NVIDIA something much harder to disrupt than a temporary hardware lead. It gave NVIDIA a developer trust. And developer trust is one of the hardest things in technology to copy. Because once a developers build around a platform, companies build around it. Once companies build around it, the industry builds around it. And once the industry builds around it, the platform becomes infrastructure. That is what CUDA became. Not just software, not just a programming model, one of the invisible layers powering the AI revolution. So the next time someone says NVIDIA won because it makes the fastest chips, remember this: the chip may be what customers buy, but the ecosystem is what keeps them there.